forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March.
Again, rebounded by Indiana. The game is over.
For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk,
Oh, he just shook the gravity.
and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Deace.
Greetings. Welcome to this week's episode of Bigger Ten. I'm Steve Deace alongside my undead partner, the one and only Aaron McIntyre. How are you, my friend?
Undead.
I think a lot of people feel undead right now as America has officially gone stir crazy. Hopefully, though, you're staying safe as we continue battling the coronavirus pandemic. There's a lot of good news on that front, and I think you're seeing that optimism is now invading the college football world. Kirk Herbstreit has kind of backpedaled on his draconian comments. He went all Denethor about a month ago, and now he's like, yeah, we're probably going to have a season. It just may look different. And there is a poll out today from Brett McMurphy at the time we're taping this that 99% of FBS ADs believe there will be a college football season. So that's why this is going to be a fun episode. So this week's episode, we're going to let it stand over the next couple of weeks because we're going to go over a lot of material. This used to be one of the most popular episodes we did each week on the old Miller and Deace podcast. And your predecessor used to try and trip me up. Aaron used to try
I love those episodes.
and try to prove I am not the college football idiot savant I claim, although he's actually the one that gave me that nickname, right? Because the dude code does not let you gloss yourself, right? So he's the one that actually gave me that nickname. So we started doing this a few years ago and the people loved it. So we just kept doing it every year. And we're going to do it now with just the two of us here on the Bigger Ten podcast. Caesars Palace has come out with the first win totals for the 2020 college football season. I have not seen these. They're going to be on the screen for the audience to see, but I don't have the monitor here in front of me in the studio, but you do. And Aaron is going to go through all of the Power 5 college football teams. And I've got to predict what I think the win total is. Because the whole point of this is what kind of handle do you have on the market, right? Okay. So I'm going to predict what the win total is for every major college football team. And this was always the traditional ground rule. I've got to be within a half a game. So if I say 5.5 and it's 6, or 5.5 and it's 5, that's a win. But if I say 5.5 and it's 6.5, that's a loss. I've got to be within a half a game for all of these. This is going to be the earliest we've ever done this because, you know, with online and all the apps and everything, they're putting these win totals out earlier than ever before. So I'm also at a bit of a disadvantage in that I don't have as much homework done as I typically would when we do this in, you know, mid to late May. But they're out now. Let's do it now. Let's have some fun with it now, Aaron.
Yes, I agree. I love this because, well, up until recently, I've been doing more sports betting. So I think this is really going to prime the pump, at least for the long-term plays. I think the way we'll do this, I actually think we should do this one at a time or one team at a time. So you get that instant feedback as to how you're doing. I think that will help build the pressure negatively or positively upon you. And I'll keep a running tally of how many you get right. But this is 65, I believe, 65 FBS teams, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's just 64 without Notre Dame, because I'm not sure Notre Dame is on here. We'll see that in a little bit anyway. We'll start with the ACC, though, as I talk myself into a corner. Boston College.
I'm going to say with the coaching change there and a lot of roster turnover, I'm going to put their win total at 5.
That's a direct hit.
Okay.
That's a direct hit. Clemson.
Oh, boy, I got to believe it's at least 11. Given the league they're in, Trevor Lawrence back, I'm going to say it's 11.
It's 11.5. That's a hit. Duke.
This is a tough one. They've lost a lot. They've brought in, though, some promising grad transfers. I'm going to say 6.
They're 5.5. That's another hit. Florida State.
Wow, this one is a high variance team because of the coaching change. They've actually got a pretty good roster. Just not sure who the quarterback's going to be. 7.
7.5. That's a hit. No pressure. That's 4 in a row. Georgia Tech.
Oh, man. You want to talk about roster turnover? You were a triple option team for about 12, 13 years, and you bring in...
now you're just going to throw that all out the, out the window.
You bring Jeff Collins in from Temple to run kind of a pro power spread. They weren't good last year, but my early roster numbers say they're going to be better than people think with their transfers, but their schedule, dude, is a bear. So I'm going to say 4.5.
There are 3. That's your first miss.
Wow, 3 is so low. Okay, I might have to look at an over on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Louisville.
I think this will be too high. Public perception team because of how well they played last year, above market value. And they do have some pieces coming back. I just think the schedule will be tougher. So I'm going to say it's higher than it should be. I'm going to put them in an 8.
7.5. That's another hit. Next is Miami.
I'm going to say with the addition of De'Aaron King, high public perception team, I'll put it at 8.5.
It's at 9. That's another hit. Let's see. NC State.
Boy, I have no idea on this one. I mean, NC State's about as nondescript as it gets right now. You know, they had that one year with the Bradley Chubb team that probably should have been in the ACC championship game and still lost like 4 games. So I'll just split the difference and say 6.
4.5. That's a miss.
Whoa! Vegas is begging you to take the over on NC State with a number like that. Yeah.
Apparently. North Carolina.
A lot of hype for this team, and a lot of it's well-deserved. Love Sam Howell, who I think is a future top 10 NFL draft pick. I'm going to say 8.5.
That's right on the money. That's a direct hit. Let's see. Pittsburgh.
I always seem to like Pittsburgh more than the markets do. I think Pat Nardizzi's done an underrated job there. They have as many seniors as any team in the Power 5, as many fifth-year seniors. This is a very experienced team. Kerry Pickett really came on as a passer last year. And people forget, I think it was Rashard Weaver, I think is his name, their best edge rusher, was out all of last season. He's back now. And they're going to those unis full time. Well, they did that last year. You know I love those old school Pitt unis. I'm going to say 7.
6.5. That's another hit. Syracuse.
You want to talk about a high variance team. Would they go from like 4 wins to 10 to like 3 or 4?
Yeah.
My numbers don't like them at all. At all. I'm going to say 4.
For Syracuse, it's at 5.5, so that's a miss.
Yeah, I might be looking at the under on that one then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Next is Virginia.
You know, Virginia, they ended up having this weird trend in the ACC Coastal. Now, every team has a different team won that division every year from first to last. Virginia was the last one. So every team in that division has won the division over the last like 6 years. It's some crazy trend. My numbers don't like them very much though either. I'm going to say 6.
For Virginia?
Yeah.
It's 6.5.
Yeah.
So that's another hit. Virginia Tech.
This is an oddly constructed team in that they get less talented the younger you go. The recruiting has kind of fallen off, but this year's team, I think, is actually built to win. Offense did very good when Hendon Hooker was switched in at quarterback. I'm going to say 8.
That is another direct hit.
Wow.
Virginia Tech.
I thought as soon as I said 8, that's going to be too high. Okay.
No, yeah, Virginia Tech, that's very good. Wake Forest.
I get this team way wrong every year. Every year. They bring back
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, they bring back a ton of experience. Like they're 7 of their top 8 tacklers. They lost Jamie Newman to Georgia, but Sam Hartman started and played well at quarterback for them last year. He is back. But it's a low public perception team, but they've got to have some respect. I'm going to say 6.5.
It's at 7, so that's another hit.
Wow, that's a lot of respect for Wake Forest. Okay.
I need to make sure. Let's do some reconciliation here.
Okay.
So you hit on Boston College. That's 1. You hit on Clemson 2. You hit on Duke 3. You hit on Florida State 4. You missed on Georgia Tech. You hit on Louisville. Let's see. You hit on Miami. You missed on NC State. You hit on North Carolina. You hit on Pittsburgh. You missed on Syracuse. Let's see. My thing says you hit on Virginia Tech. I think we missed Virginia Tech, actually, because you did Virginia.
No, I got Virginia Tech right on the button.
Oh, that's right. So what did you say for Virginia then?
I think Virginia, I said 6, and it was 6.5.
And you got that. So, yeah. Okay, well, that's very good.
That's 11 out of 14.
That's
right?
11 out of 14, indeed.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
That's pretty good.
It's better than my record-keeping skills over here. Let's go over the Big 12 now. Let's start with Baylor.
I think they'll be too high because of the 11-win season, but they lost a ton. That entire defense has to be rebuilt. You lost Matt Rule to the NFL at the same time. I like Charlie Brewer as a quarterback, but he seems like he's one concussion away from never playing football ever again. So I got to figure more what I think Vegas will say than what I think, okay? Because this is probably going to be like one of my under best bets when it's all said and done. I'm going to say Vegas gives them a little downgrade. I'll say 8.5.
That's an 8, so that's a hit.
Okay.
Iowa State.
I would still go under that 8, by the way.
Yeah.
No public perception team really at all. But, last year they lost 4 games by a combined 14 points.
Brutal.
And those teams usually do better the next year. Just like teams that win a lot of close games. Baylor won several close games last year. You tend to get the regression or progression to the mean, right, the next year. I'm going to say 7.
Oh, man. They've got him at 8, so that's a miss.
Wow. All right. That's a lot of... Given Iowa State's market perception, that's a lot of respect for
That's
them.
a hefty amount of respect, yeah. Kansas.
Wow. It's Les Miles, dude. I have no idea. I mean, they did break the road streak. Last year, they won that crazy game at BC, dominated them. They did win a couple of conference games. I think they lost 3 games by 6 points or less. So they were a little bit closer to being right on that bowl eligibility Mendoza line than people think. I'm going to say 5.
I'm really surprised about this. It's 3.5, so that's a miss.
I might look at the over.
That's what my gut was, which makes me scared.
Yeah.
Kansas State.
Really good first season for Chris Kleiman. And you remember, I liked that hire because even though he came from the FCS ranks, a lot of the same kinds of players you recruit and develop at the top FCS program. It's kind of how you have to win at Kansas State, right? You're not getting, the top, 400 ranked recruits in the country at that school. And you see the success that Bill Snyder had, but they did lose quite a bit on that team. Now they do bring back the quarterback. I think the schedule is tougher in conference. They won 8 games last year. I'm going to say Vegas downgrades them to 7.
They're at 6 right now.
All right, so I'm struggling right now in the Big 12.
So that's another miss in the Big 12. Oklahoma.
I've got to think it's at least 10.5.
It is at 10, so that's a hit.
Okay.
Oklahoma State.
I like this team a lot. They returned the most production in the Big 12. You look at, their best receiver was hurt last year. He is back. You got Chuba Hubbard in the backfield, maybe the best returning running back in the country. I thought Spencer Sanders flashed a lot of talent last year. He made some mistakes, but that's happens when you're a redshirt freshman. Defensively, they bring a lot back, and they took a bit of a step last year with a new DC. And if you look at their schedule, it is very friendly. I'm going to give them, I think it should be higher than this, but I'm going to say 8.5.
That is right on the money.
Okay.
Right on the money. A direct hit. Let's see. TCU.
I have no idea. 3 of the last 4 years, this team has won 7 games or fewer. And then the year it did not, it won 11. So I don't know if if they had to cycle down to build back up, because they're going to have maybe 4 guys picked in the top 100 picks in the NFL draft this week, or if they're just on a downward trend. We're kind of coming to the end for Gary Patterson. 7.
6.5. So that's another hit. Let's see. Texas.
Injuries really hurt them last year, and they're bringing a lot of those guys back. I wonder, with the 2 new coordinators and the lack of spring, not knowing right now what the offseason prep schedule you'll be afforded is, what that does for them. They have an early road game at LSU, but LSU is losing as much as any team I have ever seen that didn't have some kind of NCAA investigation or scandal. So, and I think Tom Herman's on the hot seat. I do. I think if they go like 7-5, 8-4 again, I think there's going to be a coaching change there. So I'm going to put Texas at 9.
That is right on the money. Texas Tech.
I like Alan Bowman as a quarterback. I don't really like much else. 5.5.
6. That's another hit. So you're making up some lost ground here. West Virginia.
My numbers like this team, and they were 5-7 last year. So just a win away from bowl eligibility in their first year under a new coach. So my numbers say this roster is underrated. And this is a team that does have some name ID. I mean, we've seen them go undefeated a few times in the last few decades. I'm going to say 6.
5.5, so that's another hit. All right, we'll go. So that's 1. Let's see. So that's 7-3 in the Big 12. That's not too bad.
Not after a terrible start. No. So I went 11-3 in the ACC, 7-3 in the Big 12. So that's 18-6 so far.
Yep, that's pretty shabby.
That's not bad.
Down.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I think we should do the Big 10 last. So let's go to the Pac-12 now. Okay. Arizona.
I don't like anything about them. My numbers don't like them. I don't like where things are trending. And I think you're finding there's Kevin Sumlin coaching Johnny Football, and then there's Kevin Sumlin as a coaching every other year. I'm going to say 5.
It's 4.5, so that's a hit.
I thought about saying 4.5. Actually, I thought
damn
about
it, Steve.
Yeah.
Come on now.
I should have. Yeah.
Arizona State.
This is a public play team with the way they finished the year. The upset against Oregon, beating Florida State in a bowl.
It was a fun team to watch.
It was. You bring Jaden McDaniels back at quarterback. The defense is really good. I wonder about replacing, though, Eno Benjamin and Brandon Ayuk. Those are their top 2 offensive players last year. Ayuk, I think, could end up being a first-round pick in the NFL draft. But the schedule is very friendly. I'm going to say 8.5.
It's at 8, so that's another hit.
Okay.
Cal.
Most experienced offense returning in the conference. They lose some key pieces on defense. You'll hear some of their guys called in the NFL draft. But Justin Wilcox, that's his side of the ball. I just have confidence that they'll at least be presentable there. Friendly schedule, too. I could see this team getting some preseason top 25 love. So I'm going to put Cal at 8.
They're at 7, so that's a miss.
Okay.
Colorado?
I might be looking at the over on that one. I think Colorado's a lost cause right now. I mean, I think the roster already was in tumult, and now you got the coach left. I don't think anybody's all that excited about Carl Durrell, who was pretty mediocre at UCLA.
Who?
Exactly. I'm going to say 4.
They are at 3, so that's a miss. Oregon.
To put them at a 3, yikes.
Yep.
Yikes. That's like a Rutgers kind of a win total. Yikes. You say Oregon next?
Oregon.
A lot. Well, they lose Justin Herbert. A lot else back at the skill positions. A lot back on defense. They do also lose 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, but the one guy that got coming back is probably a consensus All-American. My numbers have this as the overall most talented roster in the Pac-12, though, and not even close. The distance between them at number 1 and at number 2, because I include Notre Dame in the ACC because they play half their schedule against that conference, there is a greater gap between Oregon and the next most talented team in their conference. That's the greatest gap of any conference that I rate. But to get the early game against Ohio State, 9.5.
That is a direct hit. A direct hit on Oregon. A very public team, mind you. Oregon State.
You know, I said my numbers liked West Virginia. My numbers liked Oregon State more than the public did last year. And they got to 5 wins and nearly got to a bowl game. I don't like their schedule this year, though. You lose Jake Luton at quarterback. You have Tristan Gebbia, the Nebraska transfer, coming in. 4.5.
Oregon State is 5.5, so some love.
There's some
apparently.
love there. Okay, all right.
So that's a miss. We'll move on to Stanford.
Last year, I got suckered in, man. When Vegas had them at 6.5, I'm like, no way, that they got to be wrong. Yeah, they were right. I'm going to guess Vegas thinks they bounce back. They were ahead of the market last year on downgrading them. I'm going to guess they're ahead of the market this year on upgrading them and gives them a 7.
5.5. So
oh my gosh. So Vegas thinks the David Shaw era is basically over.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. UCLA.
My numbers say this should be a bowl team this year. There's a lot of numbers of players, but there's not a lot of dudes. You know what I'm saying? They got like a lot of guys coming back, but not a lot of guys that you're used to. Well, you don't remember when UCLA was really good. They barely were since you've been alive, but in my age you do. 6.
It's 5.5, so that's a hit.
Okay.
USC.
This team is built to win this year. They've had a downgrade in recruiting, but they've got an experienced roster coming back. They actually have the most fifth-year seniors returning in the Pac-12 on this roster. They've got a quarterback, obviously. They still have a lot of good receivers, even after losing Michael Pittman to the NFL. That schedule, though, you open at, it's not on the road against Alabama. It's going to feel like it at Jerry World. And then you close with Notre Dame at home. 8.5.
It is an 8, so that's a hit. Utah.
Lost a ton. As much as any team in the Power 5, according to my numbers. Still, they've earned a bit of a public reputation, though, so I won't drop it too ridiculous, but I'll say 7.5.
It's 8.5.
That will be an under best bet for me, I can tell you that right now. Yeah.
Washington.
New coach, new quarterback, no off season. And the head coach has never been a head coach before. Jimmy Lakey's the former defensive coordinator. They had several other guys go early to the NFL draft too, but it's a bit of a public team. I'll say 8.
8.5. That's a hit. Okay. Washington State.
See, I think this team is underrated. You've got Nick Roloff coming in from Hawaii, runs an offense very similar to Mike Leach. So I think this might be, pardon me, I think this might be the one team that won't be as hurt as much as others that made a coaching change, that won't be as hurt as much as others by the lack of the offseason program, because Roloff's personality is even like Leach's. He's nuts in a good way. You know, he's quirky. He's into stunts and gimmicks and rambling on topics. I mean, this isn't going to be, he's just going to seem like a younger Mike Leach to these guys. And they bring back some good pieces. I just don't know who the quarterback is. But they're not a public team, so I'm going to drop them to 6.
That's a direct hit. So that's 7 and 5 in the Pac-12. There are 12 teams. Yeah, there's 12 teams in the Pac-12.
So that puts me at 25 and 11 so far.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
SEC.
All right, here we go.
Alabama.
It's 11.
10.5.
Okay.
So that's a hit. Arkansas.
New coach, a lot of new faces. Another new coach, actually, for Arkansas. 4.
3.5, so that's a hit.
I never thought I'd ever see the day Arkansas would have a 3.5 win total. Yeah. Wow.
Auburn.
They actually lose more than people think. And this is the even year where they've got to play at Alabama. So 8.
8.5, that's another hit. 3-0 in the SEC so far. Florida.
I like this team quite a bit. I like the way they're built. I think Kyle Trask, they found something with him at quarterback. I don't know that he'll ever be an NFL guy, but he does everything else that you'd want a winning quarterback in college football to do for you. And they bring a lot of skill around him back. I like the way the schedule sets up. I'm going to say Vegas is bullish on them. I'm going to say 9.5.
It's a 10, so that's another hit.
They're even more bullish than I thought. Okay.
4-0 now in the SEC. No pressure. Georgia.
Big time public team. They're replacing both coordinators though too. And they've got a new quarterback with Jamie Newman, the Wake Forest transfer, and no offseason program. But my numbers say this is, 1 to 85, the most talented roster in America. So I'm going to say 10.
That's right on the money. 5-0. Kentucky.
I think they've earned respect after getting back to a bowl game last year after losing all those guys from that 10-win team. And they got a lot coming back this year. The problem is the one guy they lost, Lynn Bowden, was basically the whole offense. So 7.
That's right on the money. 6-0. LSU.
What you're telling me is this ought to be a bigger SEC? Is that what you're telling me? LSU, whatever the win total is, I got to believe it'll be too high. I think the schedule's too hard, too many new faces, the coaching changes, the coordinators are gone, Joe Brady left. I mean, I've never seen anything like this, ever. Without probation or a scandal, I have never seen a team lose as much as LSU did. Not just in personnel, but the coaches too. Toughest division in football. I still have it as a top 25 roster, but like in, the teens, not in the top 5 or 10 like they typically are. So they won't want to drop him too far because that would just beg people to take the over.
Yeah.
So I'll say 9.
That's right on the money. 7-0. Okay, Paul. Mississippi State.
Paul. If there was more of an off-season program, I'd be high on these guys. I think Kyle or KJ Costello coming in as a former, prolific quarterback for Mike Leach and his system, I think that they could really do damage together. But I worry about the changeover when it's just so dramatically different from what Joe Moorhead was doing. And culturally, Leach is different than what they're used to as well. I'm going to say 6.5.
It's right on the money. So going back to the last conference, you've hit 10 in a row now.
Wow.
Missouri.
New coach, Eli Drinkwitz, coming over from Appalachian State. They lose quite a bit. 5.
That's right on the money. That is now, 7, 8, 9 in a row in the SEC. Ole Miss.
Big time hype with Lane Kiffin. They've got a running quarterback he should be able to exploit, but the defense is absolutely atrocious. And the new defensive coordinator I know very well because he comes from Michigan, Chris Partridge. Never been a defensive coordinator before. 5.
5.5. That's another hit. That's 10 in a row in the SEC alone.
I guess I'm covering the wrong league, brother.
South Carolina.
Will Muschamp probably coaching for his job. Their schedule, man, it's one of the toughest schedules in the country. I have them as a top 25 overall roster in the country, but I had a hard time coming up with more than 4 or 5 wins when I looked at their schedule. So I'm going to say 5.
It's 5.5. So that's another hit. Tennessee.
Got to 8 wins last year, bringing almost everybody back. I have this as I think it's the 12th most talented roster in the country. Jeremy Pruitt's done a fine job rebuilding this roster on the fly. They've got now a couple of transfers, like a former 5-star that Michigan signed, Aubrey Solomon at defensive tackle, who will be eligible for them. You do have to always cross over with Alabama. And the SEC East has gotten better. Kentucky's better now. Vanderbilt's been to bowl games in recent years. Florida's on the way back up, and Georgia is as talented as it's ever been. Still, though, I think this team has some potential. So I'm going to say 8.5.
7.5. You had hit, I think, 13 in a row.
Okay.
Before that one.
Wow.
Just let that sink in, Steve. It's all over now. The streak is over. Texas A&M.
This is the year they've been building for, but they have, it's year 3 under Jimbo Fisher, but they have had a couple of guys leave early that I don't think they were planning on. But I'm going to say 8.5.
It's 9.5.
Wow, Vegas is really bullish on them.
Yep.
Okay. They're begging you to take the under at that total. I'd be leery about taking the under there. They're begging you to take it. Okay.
Vanderbilt.
I mean, Derek Mason's taking them to a few bowl games there, but I don't know, man. 4.5.
It's at 3. So you started
3.
out
Wow. Okay.
11-0 in the SEC, and you ended on a 3-game losing streak.
All right. So we went 11-3 in that league.
Yep.
All right. So that puts us at 36-14.
Yep.
Right.
Let's go and finish up in the Big Ten, shall we?
All right. Here we go. Let me crack the knuckles here.
All right.
All right. Here we go.
Illinois.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
All right. Brings back more than people think, but lost some keys as well. A lot of their success last year was driven by turnovers, which is really random. And we all know by now the whole Phil Steele turnovers equals turnaround thing, right? I'll say 5.
That's right on the money.
Oh, okay. That's a good start. All right, let's do this.
Indiana.
My numbers are high on them. My numbers have Indiana a top 25 roster in the country. Never thought I'd say something like that, but my numbers have them as one of the most 25 most talented rosters in the country. I think they sweep their non-conference games. I think Michigan State's very winnable in the division. Rutgers, obviously. Maryland, obviously. That gets you to 6 wins. You look at their crossover games, but then you have to factor in the public perception with them too. I'm going to say Vegas has 7.
7.5, so that's a hit. Iowa.
Another difficult schedule, and you know this better than me. This roster's going to be kind of gutted from what we've seen the last couple of years. 7.5.
They're at 7, so that's another hit. I will just say they're going to be lucky to get to 7. That's what I've been pretty consistent on that, and I think that's going to be a best bet under for me anyway. Maryland.
Man, no idea. I mean, essentially everybody on their team whose names you knew left. They did have a good recruiting class this year, but I mean, those guys, they can't step in right away, particularly with no off season. They're in, if the SEC West isn't the toughest division of football, the division they're in is 4.
3.5, so that's a hit. Let's see, Michigan.
I mean, Michigan under Harbaugh, it's just a matter of whether it's 9 or 10 every year. So I'm going to say, based on the way they finished the year, losing the last 2 games of the season and the perception of a new quarterback, I'll just split the difference and say 9.5.
It's a 9, so that's another hit. Michigan State.
I think they're really hurt by the coaching change. I think their roster is better than people think. There's more depth there. They lose a lot of starters, but they've actually got better depth than they have the last couple of years. That 2016 recruiting class just killed them. But there's a lack of starters. They don't really have a quarterback. I think they're playing the toughest schedule in the Big Ten. I'm going to say it's 5.5.
It's 4.5, so that's a miss.
Wow.
It's pretty brutal.
That is pretty brutal.
Minnesota.
I was worried when I said 5.5, that'll be too low. But no, it wasn't. Okay.
Minnesota.
Now, this is a team that has some public juice right now. Schedule is not as favorable as it was last year, but still pretty favorable. The quarterback took a massive step forward. You lose Tyler Johnson, but the rest of that receiving core is back. You lost a couple of running backs, but they still have a couple that are really good. I mean, that was a very deep backfield. I have them very strong on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I worry about losing Antoine Winfield on defense. He was and Carter Coughlin both. Those are probably their 2 best players. I'm going to say it's 8.
It's a 9, so that's a miss.
Wow.
Next is Nebraska.
That's a high win total for them.
Yeah, it is.
They got Vegas's attention. Good job. All right.
Nebraska.
I'll tell you this. Before I give a pick, if it's anything over 6, I'm taking the under. That'll be one of my best bets. All right. I think that the roster is still a year away. That's at least what my numbers say. And their schedule, they better start like 5-0. I don't know how many games they win in the next 7. Have you looked at the second half of their schedule? It is like, yikes. But there's public perception there, and there's some pressure amongst the fans on Frost. This is tough because last year's Nebraska win total was just outrageous. All right. 7.
6.5, so that's a hit. So what you're saying is Nebraska, and we could probably even extrapolate it out to Illinois. Nebraska football and Illinois basketball are like the IHME model of COVID-19. It's always a week away.
It's always a week away.
Northwestern.
That was brutal. I think they're going to bounce back. I think Peyton Ramsey is not a great quarterback. He's a great quarterback for Northwestern. And when I mean that, I don't mean that like, as a Detroit Lions fan, a guy's not good, but he's Lions good. He's like the best the Lions have. I mean, for what Pat Fitzgerald wants a quarterback to do, throw short accurately and get out of the pocket on 3rd down and move the chains. Is that not Peyton Ramsey's game? That's his game, man. That's what it throws short accurately and get, high percentage throws and get out of the pocket and make a play with your legs. And we have seen them win a poop ton of games with quarterbacks like this.
Sorry, are you still talking? Once you said Northwestern quarterback, I just tune out.
Yeah, if you're a Hawkeye fan, you got some bad mojo where that's concerned. Yeah. I'm going to go where I think this is too low. I would look at the over, but I'm going to say 5.
It's 5.5, so that's another hit.
Yeah, that's going to be an overplay for me, I think.
Ohio State.
It's got to be like 11.
That's right on the money.
Yeah.
Penn State.
5th most talented roster in the country, according to my numbers. Schedule is kind of sneaky tough. Michigan and Penn State kind of just alternate ass whoopings depending on who has to go on the road that year. So you give them a loss there. They get Ohio State at home, though, and we know that they can beat them or play them tough there. Sneaky, tough road game in September, though, at Virginia Tech. That's a sneaky, tough non-conference game. I'm going to say it's 10.
It's 9.5, so that's a hit. Purdue.
I think they're going to bounce back very strong this year. I do. But the schedule, man, their schedule is a bear. If Michigan State's isn't the toughest, then Purdue's might be. So I'm going to say 5.
That's right on the money, and I think I'd play the over on that. Rutgers.
Wow. 3.
2.5. That's a hit.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah. Wisconsin.
My numbers say they're overrated. Non-conference includes BYU, Notre Dame at Lambeau, where there'll be a ton of Notre Dame fans for that. They play Michigan on the road in a crossover. But it's a big public team. They lose some players too, Zach. 2 best players they had on defense last year, gone. Best player they had on offense, gone. Best offensive lineman, left. Top receivers, all gone. I don't know. But again, this is what Vegas thinks and not me. I'll say 9.
Excuse me, 9.5. So that's a hit. So you went 10-2 in the 12-2 in the Big Ten.
So that means I finished 48-16 overall.
That's pretty impressive.
48-16. What's the percentage on that? Can you figure that out real quick in real time?
48-16.
48, yeah. So it's 48 divided by 64, basically. Like that tells you what the percentage is. I think the best I ever did was I got like 75% one year when we did this before. I typically get somewhere around 65 to 70% is what I typically get. So this year I got 48 out of 64. Do you know how many that is?
66%.
Okay. No, I thought I was actually going to do a bit better.
I don't know.
48 divided by 64.
48 divided by 64.
Yes.
Oh, that's 75%.
Okay. He's smart with the A, folks. What can we say? Smart with the
I'm
A.
just trying to keep you sharp. That's all.
One of us here has a college degree, and the other person
neither
is me.
of us.
Oh, you didn't finish either? Okay.
Oh, crap. I probably shouldn't have told you that.
Yeah. I didn't know this before we got the resume. All right, you get the last word, man. What do you think now that we did this exercise?
We need college football.
That's a good way to sum it up. You know what I think? I got a pretty good inclination what a couple of my win total best bets are going to be based on some of the numbers we talked about here. So, all right, great job, Aaron, getting that together for the audience. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. We'll see you again here in a couple of weeks on Bigger 10.